Hi, my name's Barry Crampton. Welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Car Dealer. Today's story is called Karma and the Heavy Breathers Club. Women speak an average of 20,000 words a day, men only 7,000. I'm not an average guy, and with Twitter and email, some days if I don't say thank you when I pick up my takeaway, I can get it down to 3. Considering I've been a salesman all my working life, I'm a man of few words. I avoid talking to people unless it's absolutely necessary or they want to buy something from me. That could have been the reason I was trying to sneak past my gardener, or equally it could have been that I wanted to get away without paying him that week. However, as I tried to reach the safety of my car, he spotted me and blocked my exit. Lovely guy, he'd worked for me for a few years, and although he seemed to know all about my business and activities, I knew nothing about his. He started to tell me about his wife. It was obvious that he was very proud of her. She had a high-powered job, working for a local firm as PA to the managing director. Her responsibilities even covered the trade disposal of their company cars. That was when my ears pricked up. In a later conversation, when I was again trying to escape without handing over any cash, I found out that he'd had a really good job too, but he'd got fed up with the rat race and decided to do something that he really enjoyed. I admired him for doing that, but at the time, I thought he may just be exaggerating a little about his spouse. He said he'd get her to call me the next time they wanted to sell a car. I never expected to hear from her, but I was wrong. The phone rang and the caller introduced herself. She was my gardener's wife, and she wanted to know if I'd be interested in buying a very high specification and equally high mileage BMW 525 diesel. It was a touring automatic. Normally the answer would have been no, but I was just looking for a new car to use myself, and this would also fit my mountain bike in for the trip I'd planned at the weekend. Can the vehicle be bought today? I asked. She said yes, at the right price. So I jumped in my car and drove straight there. After being interrogated over the intercom at the main entrance, I was buzzed in and allowed to inspect the vehicle documents. Then I was given the keys and directed to the vehicle. I'm always amazed how fate takes a hand in people's lives, especially mine. A few seconds earlier or later, being in the wrong place at the wrong time seemed to be the story of my life. Sometimes you're prepared for it, sometimes you're not. But this day, I couldn't have been better equipped to deal with the situation that presented itself. I'd just checked the oil level in the engine, and as I didn't have a rag, I'd wiped the dipstick with my fingers. I was still looking under the bonnet of the BM for somewhere to wipe them when I heard the door to the offices open. 2 young ladies came out, one had her back to me, and she seemed to be in some distress. The other girl was trying her best to comfort her. I could see the girl's shoulders heaving up and down. I just assumed she'd got the "it's not you, it's me" phone call from her boyfriend. She'd taken it badly, was upset, and her boss had told her to go home before she negged the rest of the staff out. The comforter propped the girl against the wall and held her finger up as if she was trying to teach a puppy to stay. She turned, ran back to the door, entered the PIN code to open it, and she disappeared back into the receptionless foyer, leaving the girl alone. I learned later that she'd forgotten her car keys and had to go back to her desk. I didn't want to stare in case I made eye contact and gave her the opportunity to tell me how anyone with a Y chromosome was a bastard, and then marched over to sock me one for just being there and being a guy. I put my head down and carried on inspecting the car. That's when I heard a sickening thud. I can hear it to this day. The girl had collapsed, banging her head on the concrete. I ran over, mobile out, dialing 999. She was laying on her back, making a deathly gurgling sound. She was out cold, and she was about to swallow her tongue. Using the fingers that weren't covered in well-used engine oil, I opened her mouth, pulled her tongue forward, flattened it, and then rolled her onto her side into the recovery position. I finished the call to the ambulance service, folded my jumper up and put it under her head. I scanned the area looking for assistance. There must have been a dozen other businesses on this industrial estate, but I was the only one who was outside and there was no one within earshot. I didn't want to leave her, but I'd rung the telephone number from my mobile and no one was answering. So I ran to the entrance door, banged on it with all my might. I also gave the buzzer a few elongated, annoying answer this now buzzes, but I still had time to run back to my patient before I heard a crackle and the receptionist's voice come out over the external speaker. "Can I help you?" I shouted the words to the effect of, "Man down, need assistance quick." The girl was coming round, and although I was sure that her airways were now clear, she was still struggling to catch her breath. Putting two and two together, heaving shoulders, teary eyes, shortage of breath, I recognised the symptoms immediately. Asthma attack. The bane of my life when I was a kid. But the good thing was that I knew what to do for this girl, because when I was at school, I had belonged to as the other kids referred to it, the Heavy Breathers Club. We didn't make obscene phone calls, but while the rest of the school was in assembly singing hymns and saying prayers, I got to lay on a mat in the gym doing breathing exercises and learning how to control my diaphragm with the rest of the unfortunate kids who had asthma. It had been a long time since I'd had an attack, but the headmaster knew who'd been affected by the ailment in the past, and we were all press-ganged into attending whether we liked it or not. I used to get to school early every day to play football, and instead of doing breathing exercises, I liked to have a nap before the start of the lessons. The class's whistles were punctuated every so often by the odd snore or grunt from me. There were many occasions when I either woke up in an empty gym or was woken up by somebody putting the badminton nets out for the first lesson. There was a terrible stigma attached to being a member of the Heavy Breathers Club, and I used to get the mickey taken out of me mercilessly. But as bad as it was, I still preferred to be there than go to assembly. Luckily for this girl, between naps, I'd managed to pick up some valuable information that was going to come in very handy. When I was a baby, apparently I'd had a few really bad attacks, and my parents were worried that I was going to knock off. From then on, my mum seemed to want to wrap me in cotton wool. She always did until she died, unfortunately. And I was getting peed off, feeling like I couldn't go out of the house without my trusty spinhaler. I'd become so dependent on it that just by forgetting to put the device in my pocket before I went to school would make me anxious and actually be the cause of an asthma attack. I was okay until I realised I'd not got my spinhaler, and then that was it. Your mind can play terrible tricks on your body, and I didn't want to live like that. So I decided that I'd bin all my inhalers. If the next attack killed me, then so be it. I was determined that I would never become reliant on anyone or anything again. As it happened, my next attack followed pretty quickly, and I survived it. But I only just escaped with my life when my mum found out that I'd thrown all my medication away. As the months passed, my attacks got more and more infrequent. It occurred to me that I'd never had an asthma attack while I was doing things that I liked. But as soon as exams were mentioned, I couldn't breathe. I believe that a large percentage of asthma attack is psychological and is down to your brain telling you that you can't breathe. You feel like you're drowning in fresh air. It's awful. Honestly, I can't tell you how bad it is. You end up gasping for breath and getting more and more worked up, which in turn makes you feel worse. So begins the vicious circle. If you're the one who's summoned to help a victim of an asthma attack, the worst thing you can do is panic or look like you're worried that you can't handle the situation and you're not in complete control. That person who's having the attack needs to know that you're there for them. I was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, with a girl's head on my knee, stroking her forehead. I needed to take her mind off the attack, and I tried to think what my mum would have done when I was a toddler. She used to sing a calming lullaby to me, but I decided that this was out of the question. Unless I could think of a different tactic, the girl was going to die. So trying to be as nonchalant as possible, I asked her if she'd like a piece of chocolate. It was Galaxy, actually. Her eyes had been flickering and dimming as she fought to stay conscious. But they opened wide, and her pupils dilated as a look of fear changed to one of incredulity. The thought process had changed from, I'm going to die, to, do I look like I want a piece of effing chocolate, you moron? I broke a couple of pieces off, chucked them in my mouth, and offered her one. I then asked her if she knew any jokes. That did the trick. She was now determined to recover, and recover quickly so that she could strangle me, and see if I thought having a block of Galaxy waved under my nose while I was choking was funny. Her breathing had slowed. It was now in time with my hand stroking her forehead, and I was just in the middle of explaining the benefits of air conditioning over sunroofs for people who suffered from asthma and hay fever when the entrance door flew open and the firm's nominated medical officer came flying out, accompanied by another asthma sufferer who used the same medication. I administrated the substitute Ventolin inhaler, stopping short and pretending it was a plane like my mum used to do. And then I asked the medical officer if she would like to take over. It wasn't actually a question, it was more of a statement. But to my surprise, she said, "No, you seem to be doing a pretty good job without my help. You carry on." I did so until the ambulance arrived. The ambulance man decided to take her to hospital to be on the safe side and keep her under observation in case she had another attack. Now she had her Ventolin crutch. I knew she'd be okay. But as they were putting her on the stretcher, I asked her what brought on the attack. I was looking in my handbag for my purse, and I realised I'd left my inhaler in my other bag that I used last night. Seemingly, it wasn't just me whose brain played cruel tricks on them. Long story short, if I'd been quicker getting in my car, my gardener wouldn't have stopped me. I wouldn't have been the proud owner of a new BMW estate, and the young lady would probably have swallowed her tongue and died alone on the car park. Karma. Thanks for watching. See you in the next episode. Bye bye.